Welcome to this edition of MDM's Quicktake. I'm Tom Gale. My guest this week is Mike Marks of Indian River Consulting Group. Mike, welcome.
Thanks, Tom. This is getting to be almost a regular routine.
I'd like to talk this week about AI. We talked about it a couple of months ago, but it's moving quickly. You're doing a lot of research into it. A lot of the press is around ChatGPT and the language models and that. And I want to start there, but I'd like our conversation to go a little bit deeper because as we've talked about, it's the automation pieces and the elements of that. And I know that you're looking at that. So let me start it out this way. In the paper yesterday, I saw an article where there's a local AI company in Denver, which is taking the open source AI engines and they're bringing it in and they're creating a vertical industry app, essentially, AI model. And this is what it is. So it's a regional fast food chain franchisee, and everybody knows the names. But what they're doing is they're replacing the attendant with the headset on in the drive-in lane. So they basically have all the scripts built out. They've worked through all the glitches at this point. It's in play. It's being operated.
Right.
And this deal is it's basically expanding it. And they've got it. Everything is built in there to include the upsell. You know, would you like fries? Would you like the meal part of this? All of those aspects of it. And it's deployed. Where I'm going with this is I think very quickly we're going to see the same thing in distribution verticals around very specific use cases, apps that are going to come in with much more niche application than this just sort of the broad ChatGPT thing that we're seeing around language piece and prompts and customer service apps, bots on a website. So that's where I wanted to start.
Okay.
Bring me up to date in terms of where your research and where your thinking is on this right now.
Well, there's so much hype here that it's very hard to find what's real. 90% of the content is somebody requoting somebody else, some other talking head. So it's the talking heads talking about the talking heads. But the key thing to what you're seeing in terms of that example you just used, everybody's talking about the Bard and DALL-E and ChatGPT and GPT-4 and all this other stuff. But those are all interpretive language models, and they're big and they're polished. Now, the point is, there have been a couple that have leaked out that were supposed to be proprietary that people put on the web, and anybody knew where to look and go look for them. If you use Google, you can go find out what these engines are, and you can download them for free. Now, are they all set up so it's that you could use it like ChatGPT? No, but here's how all this stuff actually works. What you end up doing is you have an AI engine, and I'm going to talk about what's in it because distributors already have these, they just don't use them. And I just want to talk about the basics so people understand how does it actually work. But so you have an AI engine, and then what you do is you take your content. So take your distributor. So I'm going to take all my customer supplier files, all the history I have, because if you ChatGPT, they let it go out and search on the internet all the way up through somewhere around 2022, I think. And then so that's that knowledge base it got. So you take one of these AI engines that you can do for free. You need to get somebody smart enough to know what to do with it. And I mean, there's a lot of, we're actually had building majors at FIT where I'm on the board. We're coming out and generating data engineers to do AI. And so it's almost every other university. And by the way, pay very close attention. You want to be looking at the AI programs coming out of the business college, not necessarily the engineering college. If you're a distributor, because you care about how do I make money. So you take one of these models for free, you get somebody who knows what to use it, they suck all your data in, and then what it does is it starts to generate recommendations and input so you make better decisions. So these things, and by the way, these little small models, they're not big and fancy and polished like the ChatGPT that everybody's playing with. But the thing is, you're not trying to solve everything. You're going to see, no, there's no way this genie's going to go back in the bottle at this point. You need to understand what they did, what that company in Denver did. I'll guarantee you there's a 6-foot piece of paper on a wall or a giant whiteboard, and it's got this giant flow chart with all kinds of decision trees and conditional if then. It's all symbolic logic. And so they build this chart. That's basically when we map the customer journey model, when we did that work for Motion Industries and then mapped the sales process to the journey, that they talked about at the NAW executive conference. It's all in the public, they talked about it, so I can talk about it. But you have to build that flow chart, and then nobody sees that ever. All they see is a very responsive tool. So what I'd like to do is let's talk about the sharp end of the stick in terms of machine learning. I'll give you two examples that distributors have right now that very few, I can't think of anybody I know right now, with one exception, that actually uses them. And the other one is the time sense order. So let's say you broke all your customers into three categories. The current customer means I have an AR balance, and a departing customer is a customer that's bought from me recently, but I don't have an AR balance. In other words, they haven't bought anything for 30 or 45 days. And then an ex-customer is somebody that I got nothing with, that they haven't done anything for like 90 days and no AR. Are you with me? I created three categories.
Right now, my brain shifted into the recency, frequency, monetary, where you're basically analyzing churn and levels of spend.
And there's probably 30 examples I can give you, and all this stuff's been around since for half a century. So basically, you create a statement in your ERP that says if customer class is A, that means the big person gets suck up behavior. And they've gone from current to departing, then it's if then else. If customer class is A and they haven't ordered anything in 30 days, then send an email from the sales manager to the sales rep, say what happened to Acme Screen Door and Missile Supply, and copy the sales manager, because the system generated that message. And the whole point is that with all the noise in there, how does the salesperson notice something's happening? Right? Are you with me on that?
Yep.
So once you end up doing that, the next thing you can do, and if you look at a lot of the people trying to do a lot of these pricing software, this is what's called machine learning. I'm just looking at an order. I can go down one more level. This is where you talk about predictive analytics and the rest of it. I can go down one level, and instead of just looking at an order, I can look at their consumption by product. And I can say that this product's fading or increasing, and then so I can actually identify different things and then link that back in another algorithm. It says if my typical ship quantity on this is 4, that's what they need. They need 4 legs for tables, and I only have 3. That means I'm losing sales because they don't have enough inventory. The whole point is that you create if then else, and then you start to put more and more conditions. So when you everybody talked about GPT-3. Back in 2019, it had 20 million parameters. And when they say parameters, those are little conditional statements on that if then else. And so what happens, the way it got 20 million is you use the AI to develop the conditions, and it generates them themselves. It's kind of like in the movie iRobot, that the robots were building more robots. And so you put these things together. One of the most powerful things that I thought was totally screwed up this last thing through the pandemic is the supply chain. So if you look at the classic purchase models that every ERP is using, where they talk about the difference between available to sell and quantity on hand, what they basically do is you place an order when the goal is that you're going to be right into your safety stock, and the next order from the supplier is going to come in. And this has been around literally for half a century. It's something goes back to Gordon Graham. I'm going to take the last 3 orders I got from that supplier. And the 3 orders ago, it was a 2-week delivery. And the order after that was a 4-week delivery. And then all of a sudden, it's now a 6-week delivery. Are you with me in the 3 things? And so what happens, you put weightings, and you put more weighting on the most recent, and then you look at the difference, and it's a first order derivative, but nobody needs to know the calculus. The system just says, if it went 2, 4, 6, you got to figure it's going to be 8. And then so what happens, your system, the ERPs the distributors have will actually do that, but most of them, they would set up in a parameter screen when the software guys first put it in, and a lot of people don't even have access to go in and change the parameters, but I mean, that's there. So one of the things that I used to make a lot of money with, and again, this is just another algorithm, is think about a sales territory or think about a branch. In distribution, there's always a thing in distribution called a month-end rush. And a big part of it has to do with how people do receivables. But typically, if it's a 4-week month, you're not going to ship 25% of your month's volume in the last week. You're going to sell 40 or 45. So what you basically do, if you're going to draw a graph of the percentage of your monthly volume right from 0 to 100%. Let's just pick June, 0 to 100% of my month, and 0 to 100% of my time. So the top is the revenue. I got 100% of my revenue. And the bottom is I've used up 100% of the time. There's 2 points that are known. They're both in 0, 0 on June 1. And on June 30th, at the end of the month, whatever I'm going to get in sales, that's 100%. The ship time's all used up. Are you with me on that? So I know those are 2 fixed points. But when you have a month-end rush, what you have is you don't have a straight line between the two. You have a curve. Are you with me?
Yep.
So what you do, this is called machine learning. I go back and I take a look at multiple months. I maybe look at 3 years of history of the percentage shift, and then I can adjust its seasonality and everything else. And then so all I have to do is once I build that curve and I know what that curve is, and I used to do this with salespeople. A lot of times salespeople are either optimists or sandbaggers, they're extremes, but they're amazingly consistent. So we're branches. And so what I end up doing is now I'm halfway through the month and I realize based on this curve in this branch that I need to be at 38% if I'm going to hit my month end number. And I can actually identify that. And we ended up doing some work with that with Airgas back in long time ago, when they're changing all their incentives around where they can actually figure out what was in the pipeline and know what was going to ship. And we knew what the error rates were because the error rates are consistent. So if you put an algorithm together, it says Herbie usually overestimates. And so I don't tell Herbie this. I discounted the 10% in my forecast, and Mary Sue is always an optimist. I got to turn hers back. So, but all those error rates, what AI does is you put together these algorithms. It's basically linear algebra, or what's called Monte Carlo simulation, where you're taking a bunch of these linear equations and solving them simultaneously. And as you put them together, it starts to tell you what's going to happen, and you can predict what's going to happen. And the AI is how you make the transition from just knowing where you are now, right, in terms of doing analytics and being able to predict where things are going to go. Best indication, the best predictor of future performance is past performance, and the ability to put these algorithms in. I mean, one of the things that one of the guys that we talk about has done an absolutely outstanding job in terms of putting some of these algorithms together. And you see like the software companies, that everybody's adding these algorithms back and forth so they can say it's AI, but the issue is, what are you trying to do? What are you trying to solve? And the guy that you did the workshop with yesterday, the Tony Pericles, what he's doing is he's actually building custom AI tools for his customers based on what they need to run their business. So you can either buy something where somebody can give you a bespoke suit that does what you want. You can go out and get your own data scientists and start to get involved in it, doing it yourself. If the company is big enough, this typically ends up in an FP&A department, the financial planning and analysis, and the CFO. And a lot of times those people were actuaries and the rest of it, but they understand data and how to put it together. The best answer you get is when you get somebody that's going to design a custom solution for you. And I can keep, but these foundations have been around since I had hair and a hard belly. I mean, they've been around a really long time.
Yeah. Let me test this on you. And I want to go back, as you referenced Gordon Graham, and of course he was sort of the original inventory guru guy who came around in terms of how you actually program your systems to just accurately forecast as best as you can.
Yeah.
So as you talk through that, Mike, to me, it translates into a couple of different levels here. And the first one is pattern recognition. And originally that was somebody, it was Mary or Joe,
yeah,
who said, okay, well, we ran out last month, and okay, so we need to stock this many and this much in terms of insurance stock. Where that's translated, that pattern recognition has ultimately translated into machine learning, where it's more automated in terms of bringing in a little bit deeper, and that's where the algorithms come in. So you've got that layer of machine learning that is then hopefully doing a little bit more accurate forecasting and better pattern recognition than maybe a human can do. The final layer of this is where the AI piece comes in, is then it goes beyond machine learning to where the system is actually self-learning. And as it goes through and gets more data and more history, it's able to do better analysis and essentially change the parameters, refine, adjust, so that your algorithms keep getting
Better.
pointier,
Right.
to use a technical term. So
Well,
did I accurately digest what you took 1,000 words to in about 100?
yes, you did, Tom. Thank you very much. The back in the day, there's an important concept here that I think people ignore, and that's the term tacit versus explicit. So when you talk about an AI, we were very involved with lists back with Texas Instruments back in the day, and it was basically building cases and looking. That was their tool for pattern recognition. But fundamentally, distribution has tons of intellectual capital, but most of it is tacit knowledge. It's in the heads of your individual salespeople and the rest of it. And then there's political and organization change issues. One of the reasons sales guys don't like CRMs is my value to the company was all in everything in my head. And now you want me to put it out. Maybe I'm less worthwhile. So if the company doesn't have trust, they're not going to get very far. If they do have trust, it gets good. But essentially what you just described is taking tacit knowledge that's in someone's head and making it explicit so it can be used for everybody to make decisions. So it scales. And so the big power people don't see and really don't appreciate is that if I can get that all that tacit knowledge out and put it where it can be used by everybody to improve their decision making, where the smartest person's doing it. As an example, we use the Oxford method to teach distant learning at the university. And so we have, I forgot her name, but she's a very famous professor in England that uses a flip chart and explains double entry accounting better than anybody in the world. They have to watch that. It doesn't have to be our faculty. And then we put them in a room where the professors are talking to them and they can't hide. We actually know that they actually have mastered the material. So what you're basically trying to do with the AI is you build these algorithms. And the big issue for distributors is if you're really going to do this, you need to be analytically led and strategically driven. And most distributors are event led, not analytically led. And they react very quickly to threats and opportunities. So the issue is a culture that you're respecting data and using data. And a lot of people don't like it because the big problem when you start to do this is that all of a sudden, a lot of people that are very invested with a lot of tenure and knowledge, and they don't like what's coming out of the AI because typically one of the first things you do when you're applying AI in the supply chain side is that the dumbest thing you can do is to bulk up in order to meet freight prepay minimums, right? Which we've been doing that for 100 years and they're still doing it. And it's dumb. I mean, mathematically, it's dumb. But the AI starts to point this out. And then all of a sudden, this guy's been doing it, says, you mean I've been doing it wrong for 20 years? And it's, yeah. And then everybody goes into denial. So that's why they get stuck. Most distributors are using a fraction of what they already own. If they went back to talk to their ERP provider and say, what have you got in terms of algorithms that can help? They're going to get an answer, even from the small ERP guys. The big ones have got some Star Wars stuff. I mean, they've got, if you go back to the Jarvis and Iron Man, right, the intelligent assistant, well, I mean, they're already out there, Coleman and Eva and all these other things. I mean, so this stuff's moving fast. Just distributors don't like data. They like stories. They like data-free discussions that are bordered by emotional conviction.
I think this is part one of an ongoing discussion because I want to come back when we talk again about this around what you brought up in terms of that tacit piece, because there's also, I think, to me, one of the real powers of this going forward is that capability to leverage AI tools for this knowledge transfer that is the absolutely essential equation that distributors have to figure out here over the next 5 years. I mean, it's really becoming one of the largest challenges to make sure to capture that decades of knowledge and be able to put it into a format to allow the younger members of the team to really be able to be successful going forward. So I'd like to stop there and then come back and go ahead.
Okay.
I'm sure you have one more thought about that.
Well, but when you talked about that generational transition, how do you capture it? The thing that was so exciting to me, one of the big deals for me back with List back in 1989 with Texas Instruments, is they went to Campbell's Soup and they had chefs that knew how to turn on the knobs and valves to make this Campbell's Soup come out. And all those guys were getting old. And Campbell said, we need to find a way, we need to be able to do this. And I mean, nowadays there's all, PLCs, all kinds of control, twin factories and stuff. But back then what we did is we built all these cases and they actually saved themselves because they were scared to death because one of the guys ended up having a heart attack, would be premature. And so they, it was the first thing I actually saw that they used Lisp as artificial intelligence to make Campbell soup. So it's just, it works and it doesn't take that much. But the thing is, if people are not willing to share because they think they're going to replace them, right? Like the people with the headsets at McDonald's, then, then there's more cultural issues with the adoption here. But becoming respectful for analytics is the number one thing you can do for a distributor. Sorry, I got excited again.
Yeah, well, I'm still processing and not to like put a teaser out there for one of our upcoming conversations, but I'm still trying to connect Campbell's Soup, knobs, and Texas Instruments and AI. But I think we should leave that for another time for a story. There's
been an awful lot of AI that's happened in Texas, right? So we could just talk for a whole conversation about CUDA and NVIDIA and a whole bunch of other things. So.
I'm not sure this was an entirely linear conversation about AI, but if we're having an honest conversation about AI, I'm not sure linear conversation is the right way to go about it. So thank you. I really appreciate your thoughts on this, Mike.
And by the way, I feel like a functional idiot on this because the field is changing so fast. And yes, I've done a lot of this, but nobody can keep up. So to me, you watch the field, but you think about what is the impact of my company? How can I take this AI and help our clients in distribution, right? Because it's all about the commercial part,
Absolutely.
It's all about the money. So that nobody can keep up with it. So you just kind of watch it and don't even try. You just kind of figure out how can I make my business more effective?
When we come back to this next time, I want to talk about where is the commercial pieces of this? Where do you see the money showing up in the first places and how you see this evolving out a little bit?
I'll be probably talking really fast on that one too.
I have no doubt.
I'm sorry.
Thanks and have a great week.
You too, man. Take care.